One day that's gonna work. Switching from StreamYard
We're
has
we're
been.
we're, we're live.
I know. So that's what I'm saying. I'm telling everybody I'm sorry for that, but one of these days is gonna be the smoothest transition. Usually I'm smooth with these things, but anywho, people, hey, what's up? And hopefully everybody's doing good. Hopefully you are ready to go back to work, back to reality, whatever you want to call it. Regardless, though, people, portal. As you can see on at least my channel, on the I guess the preview post or preview whatever you want to say, preview screen portal combat. So it's actually started, right? The tournament is actually started. It's underway. People are signing left and right. We've seen some we've kind of been watching everybody. Chris Mason and I have been talking about a lot of different people. I've seen him a lot of different people. Josh Hoover, Indiana. Who else went to Indiana as well? Chris Mason wasn't there a wide receiver? Oh,
Yeah,
Nick
they got
Marsh.
Nick Marsh.
Exactly. So
They got Turbo Richard, the running back from Boston College.
so it's a lot of context clues out there, and there's a lot of eyes on what a lot of other people are doing as well. But with that being said, I am your host, Chris with a K, Chris Griffin, Horns Down Podcast, and that is Mr. Sooners 360 himself, Chris Mason. Definitely like and subscribe. Do all three of those things. Like the video, share to everybody, and then subscribe to each channel as well. That definitely helps us out. But Chris Mason, we definitely got a lot to talk about. But first thing we will start with is we have a commit. We have the kid from Florida that committed to tight end. Go ahead, say the name and talk about your thoughts about him coming here. You've been talking about him for the longest, off screen especially, but also just sharing your thoughts about him and what he can add to our tight end room.
Yeah, I've been talking about him for a couple of weeks. It's Hayden Hansen. He is 6'7", 270. He is every bit all of that. He's from Florida. He's played 30 starts in the SEC, so he's experienced. He's a veteran. He's got the size you need to be an inline tight end. He's a good blocker. He can seal the edge. He can fight. He's got the size and athleticism to fight defensive ends in the SEC. If you want to leave a tight end to block a defensive end in your blocking scheme, either pass pro or running, he can do that. He's got the size. I mean, he's about the same size as Taylor Wine, so that should tell you that. He's a pretty good receiver. I'm not gonna pretend he's Keith Jackson or Jermaine Grisham here, but when you're talking about what is the number one piece the tight end room needed, the new tight end room needed, they needed a big guy with SEC size, and he's got SEC experience. My comp for him is going way back in the machine to 2009, 2008. Brody Eldridge, part of the big blocking tight end on those 2008 teams, who would occasionally make a big catch, but obviously that was Jermaine's job, and Brody's job was to open up holes for DeMarco Murray and Chris Brown and the running back from Norman North, whose name I can't remember. But I'm sure somebody will. But anyway, that's what I think. I think he's a big addition. OU targeted him early, got him on campus early, got a signed contract, and it's now done. So we now have our first big. If you're wondering what Jim Nagy felt like was the weakest position in the room, the first guy signed as a tight end. I think that tells
If
you.
I may, if I
Yeah,
may, oh, keep going. I was
I,
going
I was
to.
just saying. I think that tells you all you need to know about what Jim Nagy thinks about him, and the priority of getting new tight ends into the tight end room.
No, true. You're right. For me, I think just looking at the scheme, kind of some of the things that Arbuckle wants to do, this opens up that for you. This is a key to that door, at least that first door. Obviously, I know guys in here in the chat. I know they want to hear us talk about wide receivers, and we'll get to that here in a second. But this is the first key to kind of unlock that offense, right? This is a bigger body guy. This is a guy to where, hey, love, and you won't hear me talk any bad about Kanik, especially at the tight end position. Go back to that Michigan game where he caught that pass in the middle of the field. Now he caught that on his fingertips. 6'2". We know he can run like a gazelle. We know he can do all the rest of that stuff. But if you're able to sneak a guy like this Hansen kid out there, probably not catching the fingertips, probably can lob in the ball, probably can actually become some type of threat, right? If you watch who was our blocking tight end, which was
Helms for the most part.
Yeah, Helms, Caden Helms. So for the most part, that was our blocking tight end. But you saw they wanted to try to get him out there here and there to get some catches, catch some passes, do some things, be an actual threat in the passing game, which we feel like he can. We know that he had a touchdown or two, couple of key passes or whatnot, couple of just here and there stuff. Right now, obviously, everybody says is going to say it comes down to what Mateer does, next season, whatever the case may be. But I would say people relax off of that for a little bit. Let's enjoy this process, but let's also reap the benefits of what's going on because this is a big addition. And if you can get those, as Gabe and Teddy and everybody else would tell you, those inline blockers, those guys to do certain things, maybe this is a chance to make those type of guys who played this game, who lived this game, who breathed this game, and a lot of other football savants like yourselves in the chat, like Chris Mason himself, and even Jason. Shout out to Jason. Comfortable with putting tight ends in a position where they have to block big D ends, these really good D ends, the Dylan Stewarts of the world, right? So it's an opportunity to take that step. Got to go do it. Got to see it. Got to stay healthy. God bless he stays healthy. Regardless, Chris Mason, you've seen it from him. I know Texas fans are going to come in here and say y'all purchased him just off of one game because he looked okay against us or whatever. But I think it's the body of work, and I think it's what they see how he translates to this offense. But again, when you look at it from a scheme perspective, you have to think with some of the things that Arbuckle was trying to do this year, he was limited in that aspect because you thought, hey, maybe the Huggins kid, maybe Carson Kent, you've heard that they're good blockers, they're decent at catching the football. That just never really materialized on the field. It was often I don't know, just miscues, a lot of different stuff that just didn't work. But this is a guy that could potentially come in here and fill that void, and it's a void that's needed. And I think that if you want the running game to be better, if you believe that X Rob is going to be that guy, if you believe Blaylock is going to be that guy, if you think Hatton has a chance to come in and kill it from the get go, if you think there's going to be a guy in the portal we can go and get right now that can go do what he needs to do, then people, you need to understand this is a huge addition to what the Sooners are trying to accomplish next season.
Yeah, I mean, the most effective blocker for the season appeared to be Caden Helms, right? Or at least playing time told us that, correct? And Caden's 6'5", 235, 240. I mean, this cat's 6'7", 270. I mean, when you just talk about size and his frame and that long frame and that long wingspan means that he can push guys around, set the edge, and he's 30 pounds heavier. And yeah, okay, Texas fans, well, you bought him off one game. It was one game where he kicked the living crap out of you. So, he dominated you guys and basically allowed Florida's offense to dictate some running from Bow and a ball and to give Lagway his best passing day because he dominated your defensive ends and outside personnel. So if you're going to say, well, you bought him because he beat up Texas, well, okay, that's a pretty damn good start for Sooner fans. So we'll go from there. But he's had 30 starts in the SEC. I have a source, a guy that I work with sometimes and communicate with, watches a lot of film, kind of an old school, kind of meathead kind of guy like Gabe and Teddy. And he's been talking about Hayden Hansen since September. He's like, that's the freaking guy we need at tight end. We need to go get a Hayden Hansen type guy. I'm like, okay, all right, all right. And he told me that, and he's like, did you watch that Texas game? Hansen ate Texas's freaking lunch. That's the kind of guy we need. And then, I told him he was in the portal. He's like, don't play with my heart, man. Don't play with my emotions. I'm like, well, and I hear he might be going to OU. He's like, don't tease me, man. Don't tease me like that. So, but there are other tight ends, Chris, that OU's looking into. If we want to talk about OU trying to expand the room beyond Hayden Hansen. You're on mute.
My bad. And I was just saying that shout out to True Oki 22. Like he said, just have to make the right coach decision to coach them up. That's the big thing.
I mean, to that note, we all know the criticisms of Joe John Finley. But one last thing, he was kind of an anchor for OU in portal recruiting and high school recruiting. in the spring, Nagy had money to get us an upgraded tight end, and the tight ends didn't want to play for Joe John Finley. So we may see a further bump in tight end recruiting depending upon who OU hires. And I think some of the names thrown out could lead to OU. Could lead to some interesting things, but we can jump into other tight end names if
Let's,
you're ready.
let's go ahead.
So, so we've talked about Tucker Ashcraft from Wisconsin. He's visited. He's 6'5", 260. He's also a physical blocker. Rocky Beers is on campus today. He went to go watch his sister, Reagan, on the women's team obliterate Mississippi State. So this was the day to bring him in. He's 6'5", 250. He throws. He loves contact and likes smacking people around. He's a pretty good receiver too. So he could be an interesting piece as well. And then the other interesting piece is that OU might bring in Alex Honig from UConn. He's from Germany. He's 6'7", 270. And he seems to have real speed for a guy that size. So NFL guys kind of looking at him. He's on the future freaks list that the Athletic puts out every year. He was on that. I think he's been timed like sub 4.6 in the 40. So that's a name that could also be in play. So you've got Ashcraft, Beers, and Honig, and I think OU wants to add at least one more from that group. And then, Chris, I'm kind of wondering if they're going to try and hold off on adding a third tight end until they know who their tight end coach is. Because maybe the tight end coach has a player they want to bring in. Maybe when you name that tight end coach, all of a sudden some of the higher end two-way impact guys maybe are looking at OU a little differently. So that's what I think we may see. But if they really like Beers and he verbals, and then they're able to bring in the Honig kid, maybe they do that as well. I don't know. But they want to add 3 tight ends to the room. They want to add 2, what I would call bruisers. And then I think the third one, they would prefer to have someone that's more of a legit two-way threat downfield. And there's some big name tight ends that have entered the portal that have that kind of ability. And then again, if you hire the right guy, maybe he's bringing a tight end with you. So I think that's definitely something to consider. But overall, Chris, when you think about the weakest room on the OU team, it was tight end, and Nagy is going all out to upgrade it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a need. It's a huge need. Hey, people, see what Jimmy Satterfield is saying right now. Go ahead, smash that like button for us if you would. Chris Mason, I would just add to that and just say that um, it seems to me that those 3, there is a bunch of talk about them. The Honig kid, couldn't really find too much film on him, but I did see a couple of highlights, and I was like, oh, okay. I thought he was just going to be a big bruiser or whatever, but I saw him actually running routes out there. And I saw one of them caught a touchdown pass. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
if you want to play bruiser ball a little bit, 267, 270-pound tight ends is kind of you force some teams to do things a little different. Now, Topher, I didn't say that, did I? Did you see those words from me? I never said anything remotely close to that.
But I guess the question is, shout out to Tofu for being in here.
And always asking good stuff. Thanks, Topher.
I guess the question is if you could get the Honig kid and I think Beers. I think Beers is where a lot of people in the chat is at. I think that's where a lot of OU fans heads are at right now. But the Honig kid and Ashcroft. Now
Ashcraft.
is
Ashcraft.
Ashcraft, is Ashcraft the same kid that that chose Wisconsin over OU and a couple other schools last year, or was that was a different guy?
That was a different guy.
Okay.
He's from Ashcraft is from Washington, Seattle. He played high school ball at the Powerhouse program. I think they called O'Dowd. I watched his high school film. It's really very good. If he can come in and play like that in high school, then he's a very good blocker, pretty savvy in terms of how he blocks and his sort of blocking IQ, for lack of a better term, at least from high school. He's added good 25 pounds since then. He's a stout looking kid. And, it was like, well, didn't do anything at Wisconsin. Guys, nobody did shit at Wisconsin this year. I mean, their punter was their leading passer for like 2 games in a row. This is how we stole. If you've been listening to our Monday pods about high school recruiting, you heard us bashing Wisconsin's passing game for like weeks when we were trying to wonder why Jaden Petit hadn't dumped the Badgers and chose OU yet. So Nagy's working unutilized assets, underappreciated assets. He's scouring the internet. He's scouring film from the lower levels. This is just what he does. And guys, when his aggressiveness with Hayden Hansen, if people want to say, well, UF fans hated him, I'm like, well, okay, all right. Well, half the time our fan bases hate guys like David Stone and Cortland Guillory. So all I'm saying is that if you don't think Nagy has talked to some NFL scouts about the guys he's targeting, then I don't think you're really paying attention to what his resume is. And if Nagy was this aggressive with Hayden Hansen, I can guarantee there are some NFL people who are telling him, well, that's a guy I would grab. So read into that what you want, but I'm just saying that, it's not like Nagy's is not utilizing an entire digital Rolodex of NFL scouts he knows, has worked with, and has delivered players to.
Yep. That's a good comment right there. All right, Chris Mason, let's go ahead. Let's keep it.
Keep it moving.
Yep. So we talked about Hansen, what his impact, what he could do, just as far as from your side, from my perspective about the scheme. We talked about tight ends, just gave you a couple of names. So we said Ashcraft, excuse me. We said Rocky Beers, and then we said the Honey kid from UConn. So now let's go ahead, D tackle. The switch and the verbal potentially coming. That's what you called it. I will start this out. Did Sigler make it or okay?
He hasn't been on campus yet. I don't think he's been on campus. I don't think he's going to come. I don't think he's going to make that visit. Maybe OU's canceled it. I don't know. OU canceled. They were going to have the Ramsey, the defensive tackle from Kentucky, come tomorrow, and they canceled that visit. And everyone's and basically OU Insider and Colin Kenny at 247 seemed to indicate that OU thought they were getting a defensive tackle verbal from a guy who was visiting, and we're like, well, no one's visited. Who is it? And it looks like that name is Michigan State defensive tackle Alex Van Summeren. Both Parker Thune and George Stoya have had stories about him today to give them proper credit for identifying him. He's 6'3", 300 plus pounds. He recorded 52 tackles this season from the defensive tackle position. And Chris, we both know that's a lot of productivity from your interior tackles. He got 1 year of eligibility left and would be a great rotational piece to add to Stone and Jackson. Stone obviously re-signing today, making kind of a big deal about that. That's just kind of David Stone. That's kind of him a little bit, which is perfectly fine. Jackson's coming back. So you add Van Summeren, then all of a sudden it reduces maybe the pressure that you have to have from Wilson and Smith, or it just increases the depth you have at defensive tackle. Defensive tackles get banged up. Jackson's had been banged up the last 2 seasons a little bit, so this gives you a senior, a veteran upperclassman to add to the mix, and OU sounds like they really, really like where they are with this. This probably could be one of the next names. He could be one of the next 3 names we think OU is going to pull.
Got you.
I haven't had a chance to watch his film, but it seems like basically OU got him in quickly, kind of a no contact kind of thing as well, that he was in and before anybody really realized he was visiting Norman. And that's kind of a trend line we can see with Nagy. Guys he really wants, they get to OU and no one seems to really know that they're even showing up.
Got you. So, is there any other names that we should be on the lookout for with D tackle, or do you think that it's kind of a one and done thing if they get that verbal?
I think they definitely want him, and he's basically replacing Sigler as the one guy that they wanted. Chris, I think they'll still be looking at other defensive tackles to see what they can work out. Unc mentions Owen Waffle. Man, I'd love for OU to finally land that kid after two shots at him. So he has an offer, and I think OU would add him to the room, in a heartbeat. Everyone's like Penn State guys like, well, he wasn't very good this year. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, who was good for Penn State this year? That's a mess. He transferred in. I can see things kind of falling apart and not working out very well for him there. So I think he would be worth the risk to get into our system, get inside our culture, get working with Bates and Chavez, and I think if you did all that, I think you'd see like what we did with MJJ and with Kendall Daniels, changes scenery into a more positive, much more positive culture, impacts guys greatly. I don't know how else to say it, and we know that our defensive line culture is elite.
All right. Well, I'm gonna have to go find some feel on the Summering kid. Obviously, I trust Todd Bates in his evaluation, so I'm hopeful that we can. I'm hopeful that we can kind of find our third guy. Granted, still, I mean, you got Nigel Smith, you have Trent Wilson there. Um, am I forgetting somebody? Obviously, outside of Stoney and Jaden Jackson, you have.
Yeah, we don't quite know what's with the new roster size. We don't quite know what's going on with Jacob Henry and where OU thinks he is with
Uh huh.
in terms in terms of that. You got the two freshmen walking in. I think if Carrington has the weight, he can help at three tech. I think Harris is the most talented guy we signed. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, if you're playing a short number of reps, I mean, I think you kind of want to get one of the two freshmen kind of in the get them bloodied up to get ready to really help you in 27. So, but we'll see. But
Yeah.
I think Owen Waffle again. Everyone's like, well, what has he done? Well, you know, again, if Todd Bates and again he hit the portal again, and OU offered him immediately. So Todd Bates and remember everything's going through Nagy. So when you're wondering why we're Bill's offering this guy, this is portal B-bow or some stupid nonsense like that. Guys, every offer and player is going through Nagy and the scouting office. So they're in sync on everybody we're talking about. Guys, it's not a defensive tackle that went to IMG with Stoney and JJ. It's a center, and he's at Georgia Tech. He's 6'2", 320. He's a Pacific Island Samoan heritage, I believe.
Hmm.
And he started at center for Tech. If OU can get him around and can find a number that works with him, he was probably underpaid at Tech. Tech doesn't have the best NIL. That's why they're getting rated a little bit right now. But you have to think that the Faulkner guy at Florida is kind of eyeballing him to kind of repair and replace the Florida center who's going to be drafted. So that's kind of where maybe that's heading. But if OU can bring him in, yeah, by all means, get I mean, Georgia Tech center. He played guard at Georgia Tech too, so he's a versatile player. If you could get him as a depth piece and bring that attitude that Georgia Tech's O line plays with,
Yeah,
I'm,
you could
I'm,
have
I'm
something.
I'd be down for that. But yeah,
So, I mean, hell, we're right there, so we might as well talk about that. What's going on with the O line recruitment right now? Any names, anything that we should
yeah.
know?
So they had a visitor from Western Kentucky, Caleb Nitta. He's a center. He's 6'3", like 300 pounds. He's got some experience. He would be a good depth piece. He can play center. He can play a little guard. Um, he may look around a little bit. OU's kind of kicking the tires there. The big news that's been broken in the last sort of an hour or so is that I believe George Stoyer was the first with this. If it was Parker Thune or Colin Kennedy, I apologize, but it's come through on my Twitter feed from George mainly. Omarion Harris, official boomer, you're correct. We'll just put this up here because you've got the name right. Omarion Harris, right tackle from Arkansas, visited today. He sort of showed up in Norman, like no contact in Norman. Sounds like the visit went well. OU could add him, and he was basically there. He played tackle and guard for them this year. He was he's somebody that Bill Biedenbauer recruited out of high school heavily. Chose Arkansas basically during a time when everybody was sort of choosing Arkansas in state. He's got some experience. He would be a legit sixth starting player for the Sooners. So you would have a versatile piece that you could move depending upon what you needed. And she would challenge both Fasusi and Foji for playing time. You could move him inside at guard if you needed to and put him there as a big body. So that would be a big addition. Like I said, he knows Bill. There's a long-standing relationship there. So that would make a lot of sense. If you could pick him up at a price that OU can afford, I think you'd feel a lot better about O-line depth right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah. I would be interested. I'm glad that you said that he's kind of he's a swing man. He could play both guard and tackle because then that doesn't make the Foje conversation any more
No, no,
interesting.
but he's, but you put him into the mix, and you
Yeah,
tell Foji you got to do this, you tell Ozaida you got to do this, and EPL as well, and also gives you the. We know injuries occur in the offensive line. Offensive line gets banged up, so the better your sixth guy is, and we lost some decent sixth offensive linemen to the portal, right? Not great, decent guys. But if you could bring a Marion Harris in, and all of a sudden the five guys we think are starters, you add him to that mix, you add Akin Kimi, Afalava, all of a sudden we're at 8 bodies,
yeah,
right? And then we're not done on the portal at all. They've got a Utah player they're looking to bring in. Bill's following a number of guys that he's kind of got some connections with that are interesting. Some guys who have a little more eligibility to them. If they could grab one or two of those guys, I think that would help. But overall, it looks like we may have, tight end may fall. The Avant kid from CSU visited today. He's probably going to fall. So you got a tight end, you got a kickoff returner, running back, all-purpose back, fifth back in the room now that Taylor Tatum's gone. Then if you could pick up an offensive lineman, a true could be a starter for you, and you pick up a rotational starter at defensive tackle. If
mhm,
you can, if the first day, if you can come away with those four pieces, then I think that would be huge, leaving you with two other pieces to talk about. And why don't we move to wide receiver next?
gonna say that. Yeah, let's move to wide receiver because I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. Before we move to that, though, shout out to our sponsor for these recruiting pods, Kaizen Performance Fitness here in Norman. Definitely go look them up. I'll say the name again, Kaizen Performance Fitness. So definitely help us out with that. But it seems like we had a couple of wide receivers um, on campus, I believe, today. But we could talk about this name right here if you want to stop at the running backs just for a
Yeah.
second.
Well, Jimmy's always asking good questions. Jimmy, thanks for being in chat. There's nothing on Caden Durham yet. And I think the problem here is I don't anticipate OU is going to be really interested in spending RB1 portal elite running back money in the portal this cycle. Okay. Now, is Durham willing to come to Norman and accept a little less? I don't know if that's true. Obviously, he's got huge connections to Norman and our present team. If he was willing to accept a prove it deal from OU, I'd have no problem with OU bringing him in as a sixth running back and adding him to the mix. Is he going to be willing to do that versus going to somewhere like FSU or Auburn or somewhere else? I don't know. Or Louisville or I don't know. Somebody may decide that they think Caden Durham is RB1.
Yeah.
He was banged up this year. Lost RB1 job to Harlem Berry, who was a 5-star top 20 player in the nation. So
Yeah.
it wasn't a huge surprise, but there's something that we're only in day 3. OU's lining up the stuff that they want right off the bat. and adding a running back to the mix. They didn't really. Oh, you didn't make any moves on the Hawkins kid. He chose OSU. So I think OU's got bigger issues they're going to try and resolve. So if Durham wants to come back around to OU, well, we can see that. I'm not sure how important it is for Caden Durham to take a visit. He's been to Norman, 10, 15 times. He grew up in the Oklahoma City area and all that. So I'm not sure how much important a visit is. So let's just, guys, it took a couple of weeks for OU to get Marvin Jones Jr. and Kendall Daniels. They needed to go out and see what their worth was, and then they came back to OU after they realized, I want to be in a better position for development, right? And that's kind of what happened there. So back to wide receiver. So the
I
first
was gonna say, look at this question real quick by Byron Smith. At the running back position, is OU looking for a starter who will be the main back or a rotation running back?
I think that OU is not. This is all about money. Running backs is a depth position where you need numbers in the room, right?
Mhm.
So if they can find a number that Durham would really be willing to work with, then I think they could make the deal. And then they're just going to let it play out. And Durham would have, if he's healthy, I understand he was banged up with LSU this year. If he's healthy, if he's not, that's another thing. I don't know his injury history, and I think OU would be very wary about that. But if he came in and said, "No, I'm healthy," and you could add him to the mix in a spring where you wouldn't have Blaylock and Robinson to a degree, or they're in light workouts only, you could tell Durham, "Hey, you got all spring to prove it. Our primary guys are going to be out." So if you can move, if that's something you're willing to work with, but notice OU isn't going to be. They didn't a true primary feature back didn't show up on campus this weekend, so that tells you that OU didn't doesn't view that as a number one on their shopping list. Tight end was number one. D tackle, O line, very much on there, and they've identified the Avant kid as a special teams weapon and an all-purpose back. So I think
And which is still a great segue to our next position of interest, simply because this is a need that they want to truly address in the portal, which is wide receiver. And it sounds like we got some guys that are incoming, but we had one on campus that I was like, hey, I like his film. I was saying the Virginia kid, the Trail Harris kid, correct?
yeah. So Trell Harris from Virginia, who had over 800 yards receiving this year. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. If you watch his film, there's a lot of big play ability. He's a very versatile receiver. Has speed downfield. Has good rack. Has good rack. Has good rack run after catch yardage potential as well. Topher's hitting me. The only problem is it's hard for me to do this and keep an eye on what's going on social media. So let me look up the name you're saying.
App State wide receiver.
App State wide receiver. All right. 6'4", 205. Okay. OU's off. I mean, we're going to offer guys and keep guys coming in and out. But Trell Harris, I think OU really wants. He was one of the guys, I think, that was the unnamed receivers that OU was waiting to hit the portal. They really like him. Obviously, Parker Livingston, it should be on campus tomorrow, presuming he hasn't locked a deal down with Indiana. And I think Nick Marsh choosing Indiana might make that a little more difficult for Indiana to pull off. But we'll see. If Parker Livingston could come in and you could get Trell Harris, that's a 1-2 combo that you add to a returning Isaiah Satania. I think that works.
Yeah, I mean, with Giovanni Gibson coming on, Jermichael Carter, obviously Pettit is going to be a name of interest. Elijah Thomas is going to be a name of interest this offseason. You have a lot of weapons to work with. I guess the question still is, because we're early on in this process, are we, just real quick, Carion and Kearney, are they still in? Or I mean, Raggins is still here as well. I mean, what's going on? I mean, we talked about graphics. I think the other night we were talking with Raggins, but kind of where are they at as far as sitting there? Because numbers wise, it's a hell of a lot of wide receivers, isn't it?
I don't understand why Raggins in particular is still on the roster. Maybe he's just waiting to fill out his paperwork, wants to wait for the first rush of guys. I don't know. The wide receiver pool is so deep and full of guys. I don't know. Maybe he's hurt and he's like, he had a knee injury and he's basically saying that he needs to stay at OU until his rehab of that knee injury is completed, and then he'll look to try and find something later. I don't know, but that could be something. That could be what's going on with Raggins. He hurt his knee, and maybe he's like, "You guys need to fix my knee, and you need to keep me on roster to fix my knee." I don't know. If I was carry on, I would strongly consider moving to tight end, and maybe that conversation hasn't happened yet. The Emmett Jones thing from Sooner Cowboys, ignore that. That everyone's misreading the way OU works. That's a Board of Regents thing. That's not telling you anything about Emmett Jones. Um,
Oh snap! Jaden Gibson just committed to South Carolina, so we'll see him next year in Norman.
yeah, I, I wish the kid luck. Hope he fixes off the field stuff and maybe he's ready to play. But the other guy, Chris, is Trey Richardson from Vandy. Is in the portal. He has some connections to Nate Dreiling, and he had a big year. He had over 800 yards receiving as well. So he's a name. He's a name to file away as well. So I think OU wants two guys and is working on trying to get those guys. The Boston College guy that we mentioned before, I think he's probably somewhere in that wide receiver loop as well. He's 6'5", 220. He's a big kid. He's a big kid. So I think those are some of the names to consider. I like the Trell Harris kid on film. He looks very, very good. I think he's a playmaker. If you could get Livingston as sort of your big flanker, and then you'd have Trell Harris and Satania out there. That's some play. That's some guys who can make some plays.
So they're asking me who are my two top wide receivers. So if you ask me, Chris Mason, just going off of just the film, things I've saw, because I still got to watch the Trey Richardson kid and a couple of other kids as well, but I really like the Trell Harris kid. I do. I think from watching his film, he's a, I would say bigger Burks, but I would say a bigger wide receiver. Now he's just 6 foot. I get that, but still, he looks bigger than 6 foot. He looks taller than 6 foot on his film. But the guy can run. The guy can make plays. They're showing it's not just deep routes. It's not just that. It's hey, he's all over the field. He's running good routes, catching the ball cleanly. He's turning upfield. He's getting yards. He's always open. He's somewhere between what you got from Burks and Keontez Lewis, and I think that he could be a little bit. I think he probably is better suited probably for this offense. I think Burks could have probably moved inside a little bit more, but also I would dare say I think Parker Livingstone would kind of solve a lot of issues as well. It really makes sense. I think for this offense, it would make a lot of sense. He made a lot of plays early on in the season. Well, for a long stretch in the season, he was now, Ben G is going to disagree with me, but again, I think that he was the best, if not one of the best wide receivers that Texas had for the duration of the year, and he was always a safety valve for Arch when he was going through his struggles before he hit his little hot streak, right? So I think Parker Livingstone would be a really good target, and supposedly he has ties to OU, but I think those would be my top two right now. I think as far as just that tall wide receiver you're looking for that can make plays down the field and can make plays, underneath, kind of making acting as a de facto smaller wide receiver, right? That's somebody like Parker Livingstone, and I think that those guys would command a lot of attention from the defense. And I think it's about really getting to a true spread attack with this offense. Maybe you can veer away from a lot of the RPO stuff, which you're probably still going to see a bunch of, but I think you can get away from it simply because you will have actual targets. And I think this offense is pass friendly when given the opportunity. But those would be my top two right now. Chris Mason, what about you?
I really like the Trell Harris kid on film.
Yeah.
It was a name that kind of jumped out of nowhere. I'm like, oh, okay. Then I watched his film. I'm like, well, that kid's making plays. He's making tough catches, big plays, and he's kind of doing a little bit of everything, right? He's got downfield speed, but he's also a guy you can throw, kind of a wide receiver screen to. He's going to make yards after catch. So I'm like, that's a weapon. That's a playmaker. The Livingston kid, I think he fits. As a bigger receiver, I think there's a lot of he fits in with what OU can do. Trey Richardson from Vandy, he makes a lot of plays. He's been a big time player in the SEC. He's one of Pavia's top targets. That kind of attitude that I appreciate that. Of the other guys out there that haven't been connected with OU, I need to go back and look at the Boston College kids film. I haven't watched it in a while, but he's obviously got the size that you want at 6'5", 220.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting. And I like Amari Miller, but kind of looks like ASU maybe is close to wrapping him up.
Yeah, he had that visit in Tech, and so those numbers are going to be truly inflated. And a lot of places have him as like what the number 2 or 3 receiver in this portal class. So the number that he's going to be demanding, I think that you could probably not saying that you can go get cheaper wide receivers, but I think that you could probably split that amongst 2 or so wide receivers to really fill out that room.
Yeah, I mean, there's an LSU wide receiver who, what's his name, Parker, that hit the portal, who's a 5'11", 200 to 5'11", 190. He's really fast and kind of got a little bit of that, got a little bit of that wiggle to make guys miss. But the whole LSU thing's that's just kind of a mess. I'm not sure how many LSU kids I really want to touch.
Yeah.
It's kind of messy there. But yeah, I think there's some additional players there. And again, we're only 3 days in. New names are getting added to the portal. OU's moving around heavily. There are visits that are supposed to be happening next week. Dakota Fields, the big DB from Oregon, is supposed to be coming in. That's an interesting story. I think that's kind of Stacy Ford maybe getting called by the coaches from Gardena Sarah saying, hey, we got a guy that's kind of lost his way at Oregon. I'm not saying that's Oregon's fault, by the way, guys. I'm just saying that sometimes guys kind of get sideways and kind of need a refresh and a reboot. And this guy's very talented. He's 6'1", 190, so was a top 100 player in the nation coming out of high school, and he's got 3 years to play. So, there's maybe a low risk deal there. Official Boomer 580. That is a fascinating question. So Keon Keeley, the 5-star big defensive end from Florida, has some connections to guys that OU has recruited. OU knows his high school people through Chavis and Bates. This would be a Marvin Jones Jr. kind of deal, right? Do you want to come to OU? Getting a different. He's been at Bama, and things haven't worked for him at Bama. Although he did play against OU and did pretty well. So, do you want to go somewhere and get rehabbed and get going to the pros, or are you just looking for a paycheck? Are you just looking to cash in on your 5-star value out of high school and get a big bag and a paycheck from somewhere? What are you trying to do? Because at defensive end, OU doesn't need to be spending a lot of money on guys. But if somebody wants to come in, this is, if you guys remember the conversation Venables had with Marvin Jones Jr. when he visited the second time, because he visited, out of high school. Brent's like, well, here's all the problems we see with you. Do you want to come work on them, or do you just want to go somewhere else and cash in on your 5-star high school status? And Marvin Jones Jr. took it to heart, came in, worked his ass off, and I think he's going to end up on Ethan Downs is on special teams for the Broncos tonight. No, that's not right. For the
Chiefs, right?
I think the Chiefs, and he was causing fumbles today, and he's on their roster. Yeah, he's on the Chiefs. So, if you're Keon Keeley, and I think Marvin Jones Jr. will be on an NFL roster and will cash several NFL paychecks. Yeah. He's only just hit. He now has the work ethic he needs. He knows the motor he needs. So if Keon Keeley wants to have that conversation, I think OU would be open to it.
Yeah, I see Benji. Now, we're not saying that he cashed in on his 5-star projections. We're saying that he added something to his film, the effort, the engine, the motor. every play mentality matters, right? Like
Yeah,
I think those are the things that teams are going to look at and say he has the talent, he has all the rest of this, and I think that um,
because he'll combine well. He's going to
yeah,
combine like a madman.
he's gonna come. He's gonna do what he needs to do. And I think that OU is gonna talk him up as well. Especially, I mean, we've seen them do more with less, right? Um, Trace Ford was getting camp, so we know the knee injuries that he's had. You were able to get a bunch of guys on a bunch of camps, and then Ethan Downs as
I
well.
mean, Jonah
Uh,
Lalalu, Jonah Lalalu, a guy that
yeah,
came. I
who's
mean,
getting it on, right?
who's
Yeah.
about to cash a big check. He will.
Where what is yeah, shout out to that guy right there. I was reading that and I was like, that's amazing. What is what where does he play? Because I was talking to my uncle about this kid and he was like, he's not necessarily a three tech, but he's not necessarily a DN, right? He's kind of like a tweener, or how would
No,
you
no,
just
he's a. If you get him right and you get him going, he's a D end.
you think he's a DN?
Yeah, he's a D end.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that something that you think they could kick the tires on? Possibly, is this kind of something late? Because Marvin Jones Jr. last year it took a while for that to kind of
Well, I think that.
materialize. That was a guy we were just projecting. I mean, I think I was the first one that was like, "What about him?" And you guys were like, "Ah."
Well, I mean, that's so there's a couple of guys that sort of fit this model that this mode that like generally speaking, like if Kirby Smart can't get something out of a guy, you're like, what are we going to get out of him, right?
Yeah,
But Marvin Jones Jr. that proved untrue, right? So there's some guys who I think OU will, if they get their major needs taken care of, Chris, tight end, wide receiver, rotational defensive tackle, O line depth. They may be 2 weeks into the portal. They may have some cash left, may have a couple of spots left, and some agents may be calling Nagy up and say, well, so Thievery, Marvin went from Georgia to FSU, and he sort of cashed in on his FSU legacy and his 5-star status when he did that. Okay? FSU kind of gave him a bigger bag. Also, remember, Thievery, Marvin Jones Jr. was a legacy at FSU, and his dad was Marvin Jones, Shade Tree Marvin Jones, a freaking FSU legend. So that's a different story there, right? But I'm saying if you're Keon Keeley and you're 10 days in and you're not finding the big money you're looking for, maybe OU says, well, come visit. Let's talk. Let's sit down and talk and see where you are. And like I said, Chavis and Bates know his high school guys, his high school coaches. They know the area he's from. He's from the Tampa area, I believe, from there. So generally speaking, I think that's a conversation you could have. Jordan Thomas is leaving Georgia. He's a former 5-star, top high 4 defensive tackle, 6'5", 310. It's just not working for him at Georgia. Is he looking for a paycheck or is he looking to be developed somewhere? Bates wanted him out of high school. If I'm a Waywood elite defensive tackle, OU and Todd Bates is like the first or second phone call I'm making. If I'm not quite getting in the direction I need to be going, that's the first call I'm making. Maybe there's another program out there, somebody else out there who would be just as good. But I follow OU, so I'm going to say Todd Bates. That'd be a phone call I would make based upon what he's done elsewhere.
So answer this question right here by official Boomer 580. He says, "Are we looking at Cheetah or going with what we have on campus?" That's what.
Okay, so there's an interesting visitor who came in, and he was Cole Sullivan. We haven't talked about him. Cole Sullivan from Michigan. He's a big, rangy linebacker that could be your big cheetah, maybe. He also could just be a kick-ass linebacker for the Sooners. And OU's pushing Michigan to the brink on this. Michigan desperately wants Cole Sullivan back, and he's visited OU. They didn't want him to visit OU. He showed up in Norman. If you see the panic on the Michigan boards about it, it was kind of funny. Michigan's trying to reel him back in, just like they are the Michigan offensive lineman that visited Texas. Don't think Texas is getting Sprague and the other guy automatically. Michigan could roll those kids back with a bigger NIL offer. I think Sullivan, again, if you're a linebacker and you came to visit OU for the day, and you're around Brent Venables for the day, and you're an elite-looking linebacker, your head's got to be spinning a little bit about where you should be. So I don't think he would be a big cheetah. Does he allow you to allow? Does he take some pressure off Powers having to be an every down cheetah next year? Could be. We still don't know how OU wants to use Taylor Heim, who kind of fell behind Kendall Daniels last year, but has the wingspan and athleticism to play cheetah. But obviously fell behind Kendall Daniels, which is just, Daniels is a mutant, so that makes sense there.
Yeah.
So I think there's a possibility. We'll see. OU's kicking the tires on some cornerbacks and safeties that have hit the portal, doing some follows. No visits other than the Dakota Fields kid so far.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that right there. I think that's somebody that, yeah.
So we'll see how that shakes out. But with OU losing the guys they lost at cornerback and some DBs, True Okie, when did you hear that? That's the question I have because, I'm not to make fun of the guy or knock the guy, but the Michigan on 3 guy lives in Australia. So, g'day, shrimp on the bobby, dude. But I don't really know how connected he exactly is in Ann Arbor. So last I heard, there's nothing. Michigan was sending a guy into his home. I was hoping to lock that up, but I haven't heard that that's the case. I mean, it could happen any day, any minute now. But Michigan is desperate to get this guy back. From that perspective, they are. I wouldn't say they're in a panic mode, but they are very, very desperate. Looks like Sorsby's going to Texas Tech.
Tech, right? Yeah.
LSU is. I don't know what LSU's doing. We offered Dozier. Lagway apparently. If you're wondering where Lagway's going, FSU seems to be somewhere. Maybe.
Which is terrible for him. Look at what Topher is saying real quick. The new linebacker coach is supposed to meet with him tomorrow. I assume that's for obviously Michigan.
Yeah.
Sullivan, yeah. So
I think that's. We're gonna answer one way or the other there. They're scheduled to bring in the Lampron kid, Gideon Lampron, next week, and they are still circling Owen Long. Owen Chambliss looks like he's going to. I've mentioned him before. Looks at linebacker. Looks like he's going to Nebraska. That's where his defensive coordinator is going. Owen Long, I think, is still out there. That OU basically has told Owen, we want you, but we need to hear what's going on with Owen Heineke. Because if they get Owen Heineke back, I don't think they can bring in Owen Long. So we'll see. And the Heineke deal is supposed to. There's supposed to be some positive movement on that towards him getting a waiver, but we will see. But OU's definitely pushing that right now. They want to. I think Kip and Satania are coming back. I don't know why we don't have an announcement on that. I think maybe OU's putting together some splashy video for it. That's what I think. So Owen Long. I think if Heineke leaves, you'll get Owen Long on. You get Owen Long onto campus as soon as you can. If Heineke is, finally just says, I'm going to the Senior Bowl. I'm going to get myself ready for the combine. If he says that, then I think Owen Long moves up, and OU has the money to get him.
Oh, this is big.
Isaac Brown just re-signed with Louisville. Sorry, that's pretty funny. Yeah, On Three has two Michigan sites. Okay, well, all right. I'm not reading either one of them, but okay.
All right, Chris Mason. Anything else? We've been on here for almost an hour.
Man, Chris, there's so much stuff flying around. I don't know how we could do it in 30 minutes.
Yeah,
and answer questions as well. No, I mean I think tomorrow we'll be back tomorrow night because I think we'll usually get some verbals in the next 24 hours. So we'll be back tomorrow night and we'll do our wrap up again. And, I think Chris and I are going to try and do these as much as we can with our schedules. And when with what's going on with the Sooners. But no, I don't know. I think the if you could get a linebacker, if you could get Cole Sullivan, and that's linebacker depth right there, and then all of a sudden you're checking all of the boxes you need.
Mhm.
So I think the interesting thing will be, Chris, as we move into next week, do some of these names like Keon Keeley or Jordan Thomas, that some of these names start floating into the OU mix, where Nagy's trying to get high end deals, high risk, high potential deals, and beef up our depth and our roster.
All right. Trioki will answer this real quick. No, I haven't heard anything about any Michigan tight end.
Yeah,
Tight ends.
yeah. So
Oh, go ahead. Go
so
ahead. Go ahead.
so, so there's it's his name's Priest Corn,
Yeah.
and
Priest Horn.
that's what I believe it's called, is pressed corn maybe.
Yeah.
He's a big kid, 6'6", 250, kind of goofy looking. Um, I'm not going to say that in front of him, obviously, because he'd throw me into a locker or through a wall. But he hasn't done much at Michigan. He's hit the portal. He fits in that category of, I think, someone that our new tight end coach could get.
Yeah.
So, from that perspective, like, okay, new tight end coach, you're a 5-star guy out of high school. You're supposed to be elite. You're physically big. We need an elite two-way tight end. Come here, Michigan. He's fallen behind at Michigan, but Michigan's had some damn good tight ends. The
Yeah.
Klein kid is going to be a draftable. The Loveland kid is tearing it up with the Bears, and the guy before the Loveland.
Up
Um,
north, they're just doing something different from Iowa to Penn State these past couple of years. You can go to Iowa State. You can go to um, Michigan. Number of those schools, especially in that Big Ten area slash, I guess you say Big 12 with Iowa State. But tight ends up there is just, I mean, just they just play different, right? So
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of MAC tight ends. I
yeah,
mean, the tight end business is weird because basically A&M is like clearing out their tight end room. That's one last name to think about. The big Swedish tight end, Olinstrom, is leaving A&M, and he's 6'5", 260. Has maybe some really undeveloped game in the passing side. Maybe he shows up in Norman as well. Everyone thinks he's headed to K State with Colin Klein. That's probably what will end up happening. But that's another name. His name's Theo something Olenstrom, I believe. That's something else that could be in there. But overall, you guys should just prepare for us having shows this week, and we're throwing new names at you that we've not heard of before. That's just the way things are working. But I'd like to think, Chris, that if they could strike on Trell Harris and Livingston, you could put wide receiver recruiting to bed.
I believe so as well. I think you would have what you would need. But people, look, we've been here for an hour. We're here for a good time, not a long time. We will be back once something happens. If not, then people expect us to be right back here tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So definitely go ahead, like, subscribe, and do all those different things for this for each channel, Horns Down Podcast and Students 360. Students 360 is the central location of the recruiting pods. Chris Mason is going to drop a recruiting pod, a separate recruiting pod, a solo one Wednesday night. So definitely go and listen to that, view all that stuff, sign up for the Patreon, all those different things. It's only $2. So you already know that, but for sure, like this video, subscribe to each channel, and set those those bells and all the rest of that stuff for when we pop on here, because we will be doing recruiting these portal videos as soon as things hit. So with that being said, people, we are out of here.